Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by and welcome to the last part 4 of update 2 in our 2021 Project Orchids, endearingly known as the others because we've got an assortment of genera, often just the only one that I've got in that particular genus, so these are the oddities. One of them is strange. It was on my list, in other words in my notebook, as one of the items for this set, and then last time round it got crossed off, and I think what happened is that it got crossed off because I got fed up with it and threw it out, and then I changed my mind and decided to give it another go, and that's the only thing I can think of because it's still here. So I'm going to bring it back in again. The only problem with it is, because of what it is, it should actually be in another part because of the type of plant it actually is. Although it's been given its own genus, so although it's allied to something else, we can still treat it as separate, and we'll include it again in here because it is still with us, and it's having something strange done to it. So we'll have a go at that. Before we get into this, thanks a lot for all your messages of sympathy and condolences and stuff. It's really, really greatly appreciated at this particular time, and far too many for me to answer individually. I'd be still there next week. Anyway, thank you very much. Lots of people bothered leaving a comment that perhaps wouldn't normally do on a normal video, so thanks for that. That's appreciated. And something else I've done for the longer term future, really, for various reasons, I've bought a large external hard drive, and I mean large. The idea being that I'm going to start storing video clips. I mean, obviously, every time I get a plant that blooms, I take a photo of it, and I take a photo of the blooms. Well, more recently, I've started trying to remember to take a photo of the whole plant in bloom, which can be useful at times, like now. But in addition to that, a video clip of the plant in full bloom could be of more use, because that could be included in talks and things like that. So that's the idea. I've got a giant external hard drive that I can now store up video clips in, you know, very, very carefully organised. And I know other YouTubers must do this sort of thing because they drag out video clips from years ago. You know, well, I haven't got any of that. They all get deleted. As soon as a video is loaded onto YouTube, I basically wipe the decks. You know, I just get rid of it all because of the space it takes up, literally. And on my fast disk on the laptop sort of thing, you know, that's not a giant disk. But because of its ultra fastness, I like to keep it tidy, you know. So anyway, so that's should aid and abet future videos by being able to draw on video clips, which I must remember to keep date associated with them, although the date they're created is part of their details anyway. But anyway, so that I can sort of say, you know, oh, this plant's going down a bit downhill a bit or whatever, this is what it looked like 2 years ago or something like that, because I would have a video clip of it rather than just a still of the bloom cluster, you know, which doesn't really show the plant at all, does it? Anyway, let's get going with part 4, the last part. Then I can store all this lot away on my current external hard drive, which is not a giant one but holds quite a lot. It's over half full though already. And I can store this away, and then all of the stuff will come out again in December, and we will then review the whole year. So we'll go right back to the start and look at the photo of as it was at the beginning of the project, and then as it was in June, and then as it was in September, and then the video clip and the chat as it is in December, providing it's still with us, of course. So that'll be December. So this will be the last one for September, and then it can all be put away for another 3 months. So let's get going with the first plant. Okay, first up then is my Sologenintida. Was Orchid once upon a time, but this is its new name. Not doing very well. Very desiccated bulbs. A couple of new pointy shoots sticking up, which is typical of some Sologenes, and some of those actually open up into bloom spikes and then revert to a bulb and grow some leaves after the blooms have finished. But this one doesn't seem to be doing anything at all. It's got very few roots. It's badly desiccated. It does have the benefit of still having a reasonable cluster of leaves on the top of the plant, so it can sort of feed itself at least enough to keep going perhaps, but it's just not healthy. It just won't grow. Borderline getting rid of it, quite honestly, because it's in such a mess. The bulbs are not ever going to plump up, and the only signs of growth it's got on it have basically stalled. Anyway, we'll keep it, see what happens, but quite honestly I don't hold out a huge amount of hope for this one. It's a bit grim. Alright, so this is a nuisance plant. It won't grow. It pushed out two what could have been spikes, or could have just been blind spikes and turned into bulbs. They started to move and they've basically stopped. There's still no roots to speak of on this plant, and it's not growing, so it's basically at a standstill. I'm not sure why it's still here, really. I missed a good chance at the Wessex AGM. They always have a plant auction, and there was quite a nice version of this, you know, with nice plump bulbs and green leaves and everything. And of course, in my mind I'm thinking, oh, I've got one of them. I'd forgotten what it was actually like. I could have replaced it with a much nicer one. It is a nice plant to have. The blooms are very attractive and fragrant too. But this one, I'm not sure this is ever going to do anything. You know, I mean, I'm down to 2 leaves now and 2 growths that don't seem to want to push on. No new roots and incredibly shriveled bulbs. I mean, if I get in close there, I mean, that is a mess, isn't it? They've lost all of their substance, completely desiccated. So whether that will still be with us, I don't know. We shall see. Quite honestly, it's a cooler grower, so the 2 growths on there that seem to have stalled might actually start growing now the heat's gone, but that remains to be seen. Yes, that is a polythene bag. Now this is the one that was on the list, and last time round was scribbled out as though the plant was gone. That was my only logic anyway. I can't be bothered to go back and sort of try and work out what happened. But I got a feeling I sort of put it out to go, you know, to go in the bin sort of thing, and then thought, hang on, could I give this another chance in a different sort of mode and see if I can get it to grow? So that's what's happened. So I'll have to put the camera down because I can't do this one-handed. But it's in a polythene bag, blown up so that it doesn't touch the leaves, to give it the highest humidity I can. And it's staying out here, but it might come in the house, because obviously out here the night temperature is going to drop down soon, which this won't be happy about. Whereas the night temperatures don't drop down in the house. And I don't have to worry about humidity in the house because of the polythene bag. So I haven't made my mind up on that yet, but let's get it out and have a look anyway. Okay, so this is what is shut in the bag, and as a consequence of putting it in the bag, the current leaves, including the old little one on the left there, haven't deteriorated anymore. They've stopped going downhill. They were starting to yellow a bit, and they've maintained the colour they had when they went in the bag. And I mean, it's got to be worth trying to keep. The patterning on these leaves is absolutely gorgeous. What we do have is signs of 1 or possibly even 2 new growths down here. So something is happening. But this plant's tried to grow new growths in the past and failed. They've just aborted. So I still don't know what this is going to do. But anyway, that's its life at the moment. Every so often I take it out of the bag and I turn the bag inside out, and then put the plant back in on the dry side, basically, because it gets too wet in there, and I'm worried that the bag could drip on the inside, you know, perhaps into the crown of the leaves and cause some rotting problems. So it's still high humidity in that bag nonetheless, because the pot is damp, the moss is damp, and the media is quite damp as well. So it never needs watering, it maintains its own little atmosphere in there. So yes, but I may well bring it in the house for some extra heat. It'll lose its light, but I think keeping it warm is probably more important than the light level it's in. It can go with the Phalaenopsis, you know, on the end of the dining room table there. Anyway, so that's back on the list, and that's the state of play at the moment. Now, my little Bulbophyllum back in June was doing nothing. It was expected to bloom, and I think there were some signs of possible spikes starting, but no real effort, I suppose you could say. And this is a plant that does have quite a long period of inactivity. It does have quite a long sort of type of rest after it finishes its new blooms. Its new growths. So that's the state it was actually in June. It was the growths had matured a while back and had just been sitting there doing nothing, and was still doing nothing effectively at this point. No new growths, no root activity. It just sits there doing nothing for quite a period of time, and then it is in June it was sort of expected to bloom in the not too distant future. But I'm happy with the plant. It seems to be doing okay on amount, which is a little unusual for a Bulbophyllum, especially as it actually gets dried out in between waterings. But it's doing okay. Back in June I was happy with its progress and its state. Okay, so the first one's the little Bulbophyllum that I've actually got mounted. And last time we looked at this, it looked incredibly similar to exactly the same, in fact, as how it looks now. The reason being that it hasn't started its new set of growths yet. It has quite a long rest, then it comes into bloom, which it's done. The remnants of the bloom spikes are still here. I had quite a good blooming this time, including a couple of blooms out at the same time, which I was pleased about. And now it should start coming back into growth. There's a few new growths just starting, which you can see here. There's 2 or 3. So the new growths will get going. They will push on and mature relatively quickly, and then then it will go into that I'm doing nothing for a while until it blooms again. It seems to be its sort of cycle. So pleased with the progress on this. It seems to like its mount. I was a bit worried that it might stay dry a bit too long and it would suffer. But it seems to be putting up with it, because obviously it does go dry in between some watering. So you're supposed to keep Bulbophyllums moist. That's what all the ancient scrolls say. But it's doing okay, pleased with it, coming back into growth now. So hopefully it should look different by the time we get to December, because there'll be more bulbs and more leaves as the new growths get going. So that's that one. Now this was my Renanthera that was borderline failing. The stem and the old part of the root system just rotted, and that rot was creeping up the stem, so it was arrested by chopping it off completely, leaving me with one root, which was a long dead straight one, so incapable of going anywhere with it. So it had been stood in moss on the grounds that I've got it up as far as the base of the first leaf, in the hope, very loose moss by the way, not packed in the hope that the stem would start to grow some new roots and get more than just the one. The plant itself was green, it was okay, it had leaves, and it had this one root which was a real pain trying to hydrate, because obviously it's not inside the moss, just the base of it stayed hydrated. But it was okay. It was the odd one. The other 2 were potted up in a totally different manner, and all I could do with this was hope for some more root activity on the stem, and it had been given a reasonable chance to do that on the grounds it was that time of year and it had some moss round it. Okay, the Renanthera has had a change since we last had it. We had it sort of in moss, trying to grow some induce some new roots because it just had one big long one hanging out of the pot. Well, I decided to pot it up in an open basket with the lava rock, the same as the other two, because it was just a nuisance having an odd one. Well, since then we have actually got a new root, so there is a new root coming. It's not growing on very quickly, but it's there. And the big long root I did manage to bend round without it completely breaking and get it through the pot so that it can get a bit more hydration. And it's got a couple of branches, but I don't think it's going to grow much more on the root front this year, because obviously the nights are starting to cool down now, and this would prefer to be warmer, so it's going to go along the path of my other Vandas. They slow right down in the winter because of the cooler nights, and that's just the way they go. But yeah, the top part of the plant's okay. Not desiccated or anything. It's growing a new leaf at the moment. We'd have a start of another root, so that at least makes two main roots on the plant, plus we've got some branching. So hopefully when we get the warmer weather back next year, this will push on at a faster rate, because I doubt if it's going to grow very fast through the winter with the lower temperatures. It'll still get good light through the winter, but it won't get it for long because of our shorter days. Because I mean, in the not too distant future, probably in the next couple of weeks, the shading's going to start peeling off. You know, I sort of start off with one layer on the side, one layer on the roof, and then a couple of weeks later it all comes off of the roof and another one comes off the other end. It gradually peels off till we get sort of to the end of November-ish, when the whole lot comes off except for one side. That keeps one single layer on. Otherwise that sun's just a... It's because of the type of plants that are on that side, you know, things like Masdevallias and stuff. Direct glass through the winter, through the glass. Direct sun through the glass in the winter. Now that wasn't that difficult, was it? Could cause problems to those more shade-loving plants, but anyway, so this has made some progress. I'm pleased, although it's not much and it doesn't seem much, it's progress all nonetheless. Now, last time we looked at this plant back in June, we actually had some blooms on it, which was nice. Possibly unexpected given its status. It was actually given to me as a challenge from Psychopsis plants in one of my orders that I put in, and they slotted this in as a challenge, and so it's endearingly known as the challenge plant as opposed to its proper name. But nonetheless, I'd made some progress with this. That was the good thing. I'd actually got it to grow a new growth, produce some roots and a spike, buds, and open some blooms. So as far as I was concerned, I was doing okay with it. I wouldn't say this is a vigorous plant, and the new growth certainly didn't grow leaves as large as some previous leaves on the plant. So it's not doing as well as it could do, but it's doing okay given that these are a little bit fussy. They're relative of Zygos, I think, Zygopetalum, so that they have the inherent difficulties with easily damaged roots, roots that can fail and therefore bring the plant down, that type of thing, if it's not within its happy place sort of thing. Anyway, let's see if we've still got it in September. Now, this one was actually in bloom last time we looked at it, which was either the second or third blooming I'd managed to get on it. This was given to me as a challenge plant, and it's not proving to be the biggest challenge I've ever had, but it is a little challenging. Now, last time we looked at this, we had this little growth that didn't look like it was going to progress, and I still don't think that's going to mature properly. It's just a little side shoot, and then over this side at the moment we do have a nice new growth pushing on, so you know, we will get some hopefully we'll get some more blooms down the line with this one. Apart from that, it's not doing much. We've got roots, got reasonable root system in there to support it, so I'm happy with that. But as I said, it's a matter now of growing on this new growth. Hopefully that will produce some more roots that can go down and add to the root ball in the pot, and we should get some more blooms down the line. I can't remember how long it takes for a growth to actually mature and start forming some buds, but it's going to be quite a while, and it's probably going to be into next year before we get to that sort of stage. But obviously we'll have a look at this in 3 months' time. I suspect that this little growth will have done next to nothing, and this growth should have pushed on a reasonable amount by then. Again, this will be happier now that the heat's gone. So, you know, it should make a better progress than it would have done. If it was at this stage 3 months ago, it probably wouldn't have done very well with that growth because it would have been too warm. But it should be better at growing that growth on at this time of year. So, doing okay and still with us. So, still being a challenge. That's its job. And the last one then is the Zygo, and it's a bit special on the grounds it's the first one I've ever managed to keep for any length of time. Zygos prior to this, many, basically when they'd finished blooming they got repotted and failed miserably, and either got thrown out because they were a miserable failure or actually died in some cases. So this was quite sort of pleased with this, not proud, it's only a plant at the end of the day, and I'd had help. I'd had advice on how to deal with repotting and the sort of thing it might be happier growing in, which I've given it a try and it all seems to be going okay. Now, back at this time, we'd had quite a good blooming on this in the past. I actually got a first in one of our competitions at the virtual competitions at Bournemouth Orchid Society, so I was pleased with this one. To actually get a Zygo that could get a first in anything and get a rebloom, so it was all doing okay. And at this point back in June we had a tiny little new growth. I hope you can see it. It's absolutely dead centre at the base in front of the previous growth. It's about an inch and a half long, or 10 centimetres ish in new money, and that will also produce some roots. It has reasonable roots on it anyway. I didn't lose the old root system when it was repotted, which is why it's still with us basically. So pleased with its progress, very pleased with the blooming I had on it and the fact that it could get a first in a competition. So let's see how it did. Now every time we look at the Zygo is a bonus, because the fact that we're looking at it means it's still here and it's still alive. This is now the longest I've ever kept a Zygo going, so well pleased about that. This was potted in such a way to allow for new growths, but I think we may have overcooked it, shall we say, because the way the plant looks at the moment, I've got a horrible feeling it might push out a new growth right on the edge of the pot. But last time we looked at it, we had a little new growth here. Well, that's pushed on quite nicely, starting to form its bulb now. It decided it wasn't going to bloom on that growth. The previous growth that would be the support for this one pushed out 2 spikes with a lot of blooms on. So I got a feeling that that drained that particular bulb a bit, probably leaving with this one with less energy than it needed to actually bloom. We do have another new growth starting down the side here. Now that's not going to be a spike, that's going to be a new growth, I suspect. Given that there's roots coming out at the base of it, yes, it's going to be a new growth. And the rest of the plant is just sort of sitting there being okay. There's no sign of any other new growths anywhere yet, but it's keeping its leaves and it's pushing up another new growth. I'm a trifle worried that these growths are progressively getting a bit higher, and I'm not sure I can rely on new growths that far away from the media actually getting down in it before they actually dehydrate and lose their growing tip. So at some point, what I might do is just try and push it over. Yeah, just actually put a stake behind it and push it over like that and pin it down so that the new growth is a lot closer to the media, because it won't disturb the existing roots to any great extent and put a little bit of strain on them, but not enough to worry about. So yeah, I may just try and adjust that, because it's either that or it's going to have to come out of this pot and gently be put in another one and topped up. if you see what I mean, or put back in this one and topped up. But because this media is right near the top of the pot, I can't top this one up. Every time I water it, it'll all go over the sides. So, you know, I will think about what I'm going to do with that. That's the best way to look at it. But at the moment, it's okay where it is. I would just like to adjust it slightly to give the new roots a better chance of becoming established. That's the reason. And the same again with this one. These are not warm growers. Most of them come from sort of intermediate, some down the cooler end. So I think this is probably going to be happier now the heat's gone as well. I keep it in bright light as instructed, and that seems to be there's some logic there, because if it's in brighter light without too much, in other words as much as it can take, it's going to grow that little bit faster. That does seem to be working. That logic does seem to be working, because the original ones that I kept killing were quite heavily shaded, and not really in a very suitable media for the type of plant. I mean, some of these are true epiphytes and grow right up in the trees, but not many. Most of them are down in the wetter parts of quite heavily moist forests sort of areas. So anyway, it's still with us, it's doing okay, and it's starting another new growth. I just need to adjust it to make sure those new roots get down in the current pot and get established. So doing okay. So there we go, that's the end of update 2, the last part. That's the 4 parts done. I shall now put this all away. Well, once I've done this this video, I shall put all the component parts away, filed away in my external drive, ready to be dragged out again in December, when we will revisit this set of 4 sets of plants for the last time, and just basically sum up how they did during this growing season from start to finish. So we've got that to look forward to in December. Thanks for dropping by, and see you next time.